Hey, everybody. Thank you for tuning into another interview on the Art of Intervention Project Summit. It's been fun to kind of, scour the internet and try to find unique people I haven't met before and some amazing things that they're doing. And it was really fun to find Dave Andrews because you have, I think, a great approach to recovery and your story and everything too. So, Dave, thanks for joining us today. And how would you describe who Dave Andrews is?
Oh, well, thank you for having me. Super exciting to be here. I'm joining you from good old Toronto, Canada, interestingly enough, and where I live right now. And how I would describe me is a expert on addiction and recovery, and as a lot of people know me as the author of the 30-Day Sobriety Solution with best-selling author Jack Canfield. And so that really kind of set the stage for me in the work I do. But 10 years ago, well, 12 years ago now, I got sober. And through that process, I looked at the market for what there was for addiction and recovery out there. And I was a little disappointed with the limited resources. And so that started my journey down to writing the 30-Day Sobriety Solution and now doing all the work I do today, which is primarily around coaching people, Insider Circle, a group that I use, that I do a 12-week online group for recovery, as well as speaking and group facilitation and things like that. So thank you so much for having me, Rob, and I'm happy to answer anything else about me. My expertise is really around my coaching and the work I do with people in sobriety and recovery.
Wonderful. And that's what people need, right? They need, there's this world of I had an addiction and now I'm in this space of sobriety and recovery, which can get real stagnant for people. And also people have absolutely no clue what to do. So we'll get into your story in a minute, but tell people kind of about this 30-day solution that you kind of came up with. I'd love for people to hear that.
So
and we'll get into your story.
Absolutely. The 30-Day Sobriety Solution I went to if any of you read the book, you'll see the book is dedicated to Brian Duke. Brian Duke was a friend that I had that was ahead of me about 9 months in the recovery process, and someone I really looked up to. He's a brain surgeon, and he unfortunately lost his way and ended up taking his own life with a shotgun and passed away after relapsing and drinking again. And when I went to his funeral, about 500 people, and his kids were about the same age as mine, I remember looking in these kids' eyes and thinking, oh my God, this is going to be me. I'm going to be the person that is my kids are attending the funeral for. And shortly after that moment, I came up with the idea to write the 30-Day Sobriety Solution. In some ways, it was incredibly ignorant goal, but it was beautiful in its entity because I knew that was what I was supposed to do. And so through that process, opened up this whole other door, and it took me before the book was published, about 5 or 6 years of work, and it ended up being one of the most incredible things I've ever done in my life. And through all that process of writing the program and doing the work, not only did my life take off and my sobriety take off, but also I found my true calling and my true purpose, which is what I'm here today to share.
That's great. We love callings and purpose. And
yeah.
When you were talking, I don't know why, for some reason, the St. Francis prayer popped into my head about, where there is hatred, I may bring love, and the spirit of fear, I may bring forgiveness. And I kind of sense a little bit of that in you. Looking at the bright
absolutely.
side. Yeah.
We'll talk about that in the talk today. And the topic we have on the plate, I'll share a lot about some of my struggles and how anger, I had to work through all kinds of anger, and sadness, right? And so one of the things that a lot of people struggle with addiction, struggle with unresolved anger and unresolved sadness. Men tend to really struggle with tapping into their emotions and learning how to cry and share sadness. And women tend to struggle with being able and being allowed to get angry, right? Because in our culture and society, we often have stifled women and silenced women. And of course, that's changed a lot under Trump and all the things that have come through the new world that Trump represents, and how he really triggers what we're seeing right now with the racial injustice and all that work, as well as, of course, with Me Too movement.
Yeah, there's a lot of different stuff happening in our society these days, for sure. How does the phrase addiction is the inability to deal with emotional pain, how does that resonate with you?
Addiction is used as hiding out, right? So you look at addiction and what it does beautifully. If you take alcohol, for example, when you drink, what you do is you remove your pain and you give yourself pleasure pretty much instantaneously. The power of that is untold, right? I mean, anything that removes pain and gives us pleasure, even temporarily, is incredibly powerful. But you take that over the course of many years of drinking, most of us who struggle with addiction realize we've been chasing that high that we got in the initial stages of our drinking or addictive behavior. And so part of to heal from addiction, we have to heal emotionally. And there's absolute truth to that, for sure.
So when did addiction and how did addiction become part of your life?
Oh, I mean, it's deeply rooted in childhood. So, right, addiction and trauma go hand in hand. And so part of the biggest challenge for us is to learn how to deal with our trauma to release the addiction. But my trauma was pretty typical. I mean, I had, and so from early on, I was going to look externally for ways to hide and ways to not deal with my pain and challenges. I mean, so I didn't start actively drinking or any addictive behavior until I was late 17, my late year of 17. And from then on, that's where it started taking over. I would say the last 11 years of my drinking was about an 18-year career. The last 11 years, I would say I actively was trying to find a way to release it, let go of it, and recover. And so it plays an incredibly powerful role, but it all starts in childhood. All addictive behaviors start in childhood in all these different ways. But one of the biggest ways is as we're growing up, we deal with trauma, we learn how to wear masks to hide our trauma, hide our pain, hide who we really are, because we're terrified of being our real self and being hurt with that. So we wear all these masks, and alcohol is just another mask, as well as any other addictive behavior: overeating, overstimulation with TV, screen time, gambling, sex, all of those things that we see in our culture.
What were some of the addictions you dealt with in your struggles back then? Were you kind of a cross addiction cornucopia guy?
Oh, I was full on alcoholism. So alcohol was my go-to. It was by far and away. So, I mean, since I've been sober, it's like the whack-a-mole, right? There's other areas I've had to work on. TV can be an addictive behavior, and overeating and eating to change my state can be one of those. But during my prime of my addiction, alcohol was the go-to. I was drinking 5 to 7 nights a week and continuously drinking more over time, following that. But I followed a typical trajectory that a lot of people follow, which is a little more gradually increasing over the years versus some do actually fall to the power of addiction right away. That's usually when you're predisposed to addiction, though, to have it turn into something that is quickly goes from normal use, quote unquote normal, to incredibly addictive use. Mine took many years of kind of integrating it more and more, so to say.
Yeah, it does sometimes. It's a progressive disease. How did that, we're talking about family systems here also.
Yeah.
How did that start affecting people around you?
Oh, massively, right? So, I mean, alcohol, the behavior around any addictive behavior is you make the world all about you, right? And so, and if it's truly become an addiction, that means you're having negative consequences and you're still acting while having negative consequences. So the big challenge we face is that we have to be able to look and see how it's affecting our family system, our relationships, our children, and what we're modeling and all of that. So in my marriage, it was devastating, and there were all kinds of lessons my ex-wife at this time now, and I had to learn how to handle and deal with differently, because there was a lot of enabling and other things that was affecting the entire family. And so that's the power of addiction. It's not an individual issue. It's a family system. People often mistakenly say, "Oh, I married an alcoholic. They're the one that has the problem." Not true, because you chose that alcoholic. You chose them because that represented in some ways a way for you to save, to rescue. And so my ex wasn't an alcoholic, but she was a rescuer, and she deeply wanted me to be broken in that way, so to say broken, because that allowed her to continuously try to rescue me. The challenge is once I got sober, then all of a sudden the person on the other side doesn't have anything to rescue anymore, and it creates a whole other set of challenges in the family system. So family system stuff, it's mistakenly sometimes looked at, and often the drinker or the addicted person's given the bad guy attitude, given the bad guy viewpoint, right? And saying, "Oh, he's the bad guy. He's the one that's done wrong." Well, I assure you, in all the work I've done, it pretty much shows that there's something on the other side of that they want and need in that. And there's and that's where it becomes more, you have to look at each situation uniquely and see how that works out.
Yeah, well, everyone in the system is doing the best they can with the tools that they have.
Right? Absolutely. And that's, if we can embrace that, I mean, the world will be a whole different place if we embrace this concept that everyone is doing the best they can with the resources they have. However, most of us struggle mightily with that, including myself. So, but it is a beautiful, beautiful way of putting it, right? Because that is absolutely the truth. We're only dealing with things as we have the tools to deal with them. And a lot of us don't have any tools because we weren't raised that way. And certainly, if you look at a lot of the people that are struggling with addiction today with alcoholism, especially in your 40s, 50s, 60s, look back 30, 40 years, we didn't have what we have today as far as those resources and the science and knowledge to back it up back up all these different better ways to raise kids and raise people and how to be a healthy parent.
Yeah. And thank goodness that in this world we're in now, we also have guys like you that come up with new ways to look at recovery and address these addiction struggles and everything as well. So I'd love to talk about what happened to first, what led you to go into recovery? And then I want to talk about your 30-day solution.
Absolutely. So good. So what led me to go into recovery was simply, it was to help myself. So when I thought of the 30-day sobriety solution in that book and writing it, there was one driving force at that time was I knew that I felt wrong to do that, but I knew I had to fix myself. I knew I had a lot of work to do myself. I knew I was heading down the path of drinking again, and I knew the resources I used were limited to some extent, and they weren't going to give me what I needed. So I always laugh because ignorance can be bliss. Like that ignorant point of saying, I'm going to write a book and a program for recovery was kind of crazy at that time. But what it opened up for me, again, when we set this powerful intention, and we'll talk about that today when we talk about some of the core part of this content that we're going to talk about today around how to help you in these 5 tips, is this really important part of us understanding that, I just lost my total train of thought there, excuse me. So if you could repeat part of the question there, maybe give me a prompt, that'd be great. Because I was thinking about the talk and lost my talk.
Hey, this is real life happening right now too.
Exactly.
You know, it's like, you know, hey, we have these moments, right? And so we're talking about like what led you into recovery. And then the second part was to write this 30-day solution.
Yeah. So it's to heal myself. And then, so the first step was to write the book for me. And so the first person that went through it was myself and my program. And then what happened was I had an IT background. I came from IT, and I started sharing the program online, and I started becoming very surprised that people were taking my limited version of the program and having incredible success. And that was very exciting. And then I realized, okay, there's more here. People need this. And that continued to deepen the process, deepen the work. Most importantly, I started embodying what I was teaching. And that's the key to all of this, right? Is like when you teach, when you work to teach what you're trying to learn, it's incredibly powerful.
Yeah, being a student of your teachings is a great thing because you're believing what you're doing. If you don't believe in it, you're going to change every time you kind of look at this as well. So what does this look like? I would love to dive into that and say, what does it look like, this 30-day solution? Because people don't, we look at this 30-day solution now, people look at, oh, it's a 28-day treatment center. It's this, it's that. It's
Absolutely.
like, I have to go here to do that. So what do they get from you?
So let me share with you, high level. So the 30-day sobriety solution, the book and the program, is a really powerful program to take you day by day through the first 30 days. Something that I did not find existed in the marketplace, and still in many ways doesn't, but does in some forms. And so the idea behind it is I needed something that was formulaic, that would walk me through day 1, day 2, that I didn't have to do guesswork. I love AA and I love certain things about it, but I find that it's very different depending on what group you go to, depending what sponsor you have, depending how you interpret the steps. And so I was looking for something powerful, steps for change. And that's why I partnered with Jack Canfield, who's the master at that, and joined together forces with him. Now, in this talk, what I've dissected down to, as we talked about earlier, Rob, was this concept of fight and light, and this word mnemonic that I use to help people quickly identify simple ways that they can move forward, simple strategies to heal their addiction, or also to heal their life, whether you're on the side of the addicted or you're the one that's struggling with loved ones that are struggling with addiction. And so that's what, for this talk, I want to share these 5 kind of core concepts of the 5 ways we sabotage our success, and then how we can turn that sabotage into solutions. And so that comes down to fight and light content. Whenever you're ready to go into that, we can dive into that.
Oh yeah. Well, those words of sabotage are so huge for people and their addictions. I mean, I sabotage myself left and right.
Oh yeah.
And that's a good tie-in to fight and light. So let's jump into it.
Good. All right. So let me just kind of overview with it, right? So I came up with Fight and Light. I was doing my work with Insider Circle, these 12-week online programs I do, which changed my life the last 4 years running these groups. I got to learn so much firsthand, really what's going on. And so one of the things that the Fight and Light concept that came up to me was fight is resistance. And so much of our first part of our life is resisting. We resist change. We resist emotional processing, like you mentioned earlier in the interview about how we resist dealing with the emotional health that we need to. We resist looking at things differently. And that's a big one, right? So change can be boiled down to one simple thing. How do we change? How we change is facilitated by how we view the world. When we change our perception, we can change how we see things. We can change them in ways that move us forward, and we can change in ways that move us backward. So the fight and light concept is kind of help people identify where they are resisting in ways that are holding them back, and where they can bring light and love or enlightenment, right? To this process. And so, so a few concepts, and I'll refer to my some of my note cards here just to make sure I capture everything. One of the biggest things with fight and light is this a desire to control the uncontrollable. And so that's one of the things that creates the most pain in our life is we try to control the uncontrollable. So I'll give a current explanation of that. I just watched the Michael Jordan, The Last Dance documentary series. Just came out. Unbelievable, by the way. One of my favorite documentaries I've seen. One of the things they said about Michael Jordan was he was amazing at living in the present moment. When we live in the present moment, what we really do is we're not trying to control. Controlling the uncontrollable is one of the greatest sources of pain we have. And so, so let's dive into the fight and light and how this plays out in certain perspectives. So fight and light, and as you'll follow along, and there'll be some resources that we'll share with you in a link that will kind of make this, give you some visual cues for it as I teach this. But we're going to use the word mnemonic to share this, just to explain this. So fight starts with F, light starts with L. So the first one to look at is F and L, fear and love. And so what is so beautiful about this is so many amazing teachers, but Jack Canfield was the first person to share this with me, is we make decisions based off of fear or love. Simple as that. And so one of the first things we want to look at in our life is, are we making decisions based off fear, or are we making decisions based off love? And so the idea behind this, again, is that when we are making decisions based on fear, we're really living in our head. We're really living in our intellect. Our intelligence is actually kryptonite. It's been proven intelligent people tend to struggle more with addiction because we're masters at the way we think and thinking in unhealthy, sabotaging ways. So, but when we bring love to it, when we go into drop into our heart, when we feel into our body, we're able to change how we view things, and we're able to look at things in a different way. One of the most powerful ways, and so with each of these 5 letters, this word mnemonic, I'm going to share with you one simple technique you can do, strategy you can do, that'll take just 1 minute, and it can really have profound change. These are things that I've kind of put together. This talk has come together in various ways for years, because learning from feedback and what works and what doesn't. And so one of the first things I share with the fear and love and choosing love is, one of the best ways to choose love is to start by choosing self-love, self-awareness. And the best way to do that I know is journaling, which I actually coined life notes, because journaling triggers all kinds of people. But life notes, meaning when we write down the things we're feeling, like whatever it might be, self-awareness type things about who we are, what makes us tick, what we're hurting about, what we're frustrated about. When we write those down, that self-awareness is amazing and powerful, but it helps us release the pain. So I like to give one analogy with this. If you've ever worked in business and taken on a big project like most of us have, the first part can be overwhelming. There's 100 details you got to manage, 100 different milestones, different stepping stones, right? And the first thing most people do to release that fear and the pain around that is by writing down lists to do, right? Okay, this is what I have to do here. This is the milestone I need to make. These are the things I need to do. Well, the power of that is amazing, because the moment you do that, most people experience a release, right? Like, oh, okay, I have it written down. I know what to do and know how to do it. When it comes to our life, most of us never learn the power of that. And so the funny thing is that I had resistance left and right about journaling. I can't tell you the number of people that told me to do it before I did it. I can't tell you the number of people that leave Insider Circle and email me 3 months later and say, I finally am journaling, and I can't believe it's that simple. It's helped me immensely. So what I encourage everyone to do is just take your time. It can take you 1 minute. Sometimes I'll write, my journal is often full of a lot of painful stuff, because I use it a lot when I'm working through stuff and I want to release it. So I might write down like, oh, I'm so mad at this, and I'm frustrated about this, and Trump's doing this, or the coronavirus, or the quarantine. And it's amazing the power that has, even after 1 day. The challenges with some of these techniques is people lose sight of it because they're expecting something. We're in a quick fix mentality, so they're expecting to work in that minute. So that piece is really powerful. And then the one quote I want to read, which I know a lot of you have heard, but it can never be reread enough to understand what we're really looking to do, is the quote by Marianne Williamson, and around our deepest fear, because this is fear and love. So let me read that really quickly here. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small doesn't serve the world. There is nothing enlightening about thinking that other people will feel insecure around me by being my best self. And I just got to summarize at the end there. So that's kind of a beautiful statement of what we're really afraid of, we're really looking for, and trying to bring love and light to that. So that's the first part of this fight and light, and how we want to start moving forward, looking at the fear and love.
Great. It draws you in right there too, because it's scary to enter into the other side of what we're used to.
Yes.
In that regards. And I love that quote too. Thanks for reading that too. I love it when I have a couple of videos. I love to just kind of soak that in and just realize, okay,
Absolutely.
that sounds very, very attractive. So how do I get there? I don't know. We tap into resources like you to figure out how to get there, but journaling is huge. I want to tap into that real quick too, because I can look back on my life and it's a great reflection point too of what was working and not working. So
Yeah.
huge fan of journaling. I'm on board with you on that one for sure.
Awesome. And just to explain journaling real briefly again, remember, it's not about so much I did this, I did that. It's about I'm feeling this, I'm noticing this. I notice that every time this happens, I respond this way. Things about you and who you are. And that's the piece that I just want to, and it doesn't be written in bullet point, it can be super quickly. So yeah. So moving on, then we drop down to the I. Now it's the same letters for each, right? And so the first thing I say is we want to choose love over fear. And so the next step is looking at the I, which is illusion or intention. So illusion, as I shared earlier, one of the greatest illusions that we often have is this illusion of control, right? I can control all, and we try to control everything, and we try to control things that are out of our control, and that's a massive illusion. But we also have a major illusion around our identity. We identify with the addicted person sometimes, so much so that it's hard to release the addiction, right? And so there's a real power in this illusion that keeps us stuck. We step out of, we don't look at denial as it really is in our life and what we're really doing. And what we want to move to is intention. And so what I share with intention changed my life. I only got really introduced to using the word intention about a few years ago when I was reading Seed of the Soul by Gary Zukov. Unbelievable book. Oprah Winfrey did the 25-year introduction to that book because it changed her life. She shared that when she read about intention in the book, she changed her whole practice, and that's where Super Soul Sunday came from. All the Super Soul Sunday, where she brings these amazing teachers, came from her shift on intention. So every time after she read that book, she came to the opposite. Every time she was getting her show ready, she said, what's the intention we want to create? Intention is different than goals because intention is about being. It's about living in that moment. It's not about becoming. It's not, we often get so focused on goals and outcome that we don't enjoy life in the moment. So let me share with you a really powerful formula that applies here. And it's something that I just love. So because it'll go right to the next thing. So the technique that I offer with this one is that we want to ask one simple question on a regular basis to learn how our best self shows up. And that simply is, what would the best version of me do? What would the highest version of me do? What would the essential self do? And that, when we ask that question, it's amazing how often we can connect to the real answer. Amazing to me. Like I do this all the time in coaching. I'm like, wow, that was simple. And so, but let me share with you why this works so well and a concept, because this taps into life purpose, which usually triggers people in a big way, like I'm not living my purpose. And so this is a definition of happiness by Greeks. Greeks define happiness as the feeling of joy as you're moving towards your potential. So that's the first thing we're going to look at, is happiness is the feeling of joy moving towards our potential. Purpose is our highest goal. And the way Brian Johnson explains it, which Brian Johnson, amazing teacher, he does Philosopher's Notes and Optimize, and one of my favorite teachers, he shares that all of our purpose is the same. Our purpose is to connect and share our highest self within us. And so he says that our purpose, well, everyone can live their life purpose by one way, and I believe this. It's simply saying on a daily basis, whatever job you're in, whatever you're doing, what does the best version of me do in this moment? And then do your best to show up that way. And then he says, when you learn how to do that, then your mission can come out, right? And so really that's how I'm doing this work today, is I started sharing my best self and asking that question and really doing that even though I had a day job. And over time, what that came with, I realized my mission was to work with people in addiction and do the work I do today. So the step is actually quite simple in this one, which is to ask the question, what does the best version of me do? And then set that intention for the day. And meaning you can set intention daily, weekly, monthly, whatever you want, but daily is great. And you can write it down as affirmations. I love writing down affirmations as intentions as affirmations, because again, you're connected with what you want, not what you don't want. And that's the really key question here, right? What do we really want in this life? What is it that we want to do and be? And then understanding that setting that intention is the powerful way to release that. I want to thrive in sobriety. Well, what does that mean? And setting that intention. Does that all make sense around that, or?
Completely makes sense. I'm totally jiving with you. I can't wait to get to the rest of the letters of this to see how you progress through it. But I'm loving it. Keep going, man. This is great.
Awesome. So then we move on to the G, right? So LIG and FIG. So G is we either choose greed or gratitude. And so greed is this mindset of more. And we're in a culture of more, right? Like this, I want more, I need more, materialism, power. However you feel about Trump is one that to me defines more, and a consumer, right? Like and so the challenge for us is to learn how to pull away from that, because alcohol, we want more alcohol, we want more escape, we want more all these. What we really need to do is connect to gratitude and be grateful for what we have, and that is what facilitates more. Now, I'll use Oprah again here. She has shared many times that if there was one concept she would teach, if she could teach only one concept to everyone that comes in her doors, it would be gratitude. That would be the number one. And I agree. We need to cultivate an attitude of gratitude. And so the one technique I share here, which is in the book, but it's a little different because I learned this after I published this in the book, and it's really powerful, is a 21-day exercise of gratitude, which simply is think of 3 things you're grateful for and why, and really try to feel it. So I'm grateful for my daughter, but why? Because just a feeling of love and connection. She's so sensitive, and I'm just so proud of her. And you connect and feel that feeling, and then you do it with 2 other things. Now, the difference is, which isn't listed in the book, but it's something I've come to learn, and this is something that Sean Aker teaches, and Harvard teacher, and he's amazing. And he shares that you want to do 3 different things every day. So it can't be the same thing. Now, I got that. It made sense logically. And then as always, when I learn something, I implement it right away. I did it, and I did it with my daughter, my other daughter. I didn't share the one I wasn't talking about in this one. And so we started doing it every day. And then day 10, she comes home from school and she says, and it was starting to get harder and harder, because believe it, when you do 3 different things every day, by the time you're at day 10, that's 30. So by day 10, she came home from the school and she goes, Dad, I found some things that I can be grateful for at school. And I'm like, that's why changing up every day works. Now she's looking at the world for what I can be grateful for. That shift in energy changes everything. And so 21 days of this 21-day process has been proven to make you 60% more optimistic. If you can't believe you're capable of change, you'll never change, right? So gratitude for what we have cultivates more of that. When we feel the feeling of joy of having something, what we're really doing is, that's the power of prayer. Prayer is often lost because what we do when we pray is we actually say, I'm in lack, and we put that lack energy out. When we do gratitude, it's really the most powerful prayer you can do, because you say, this is where I'm full of, and this is beautiful and great. And when we vibrate that energy, we bring more of it into our life. And that's where the magic happens. So this idea of letting go of greed and being grateful for what we have changes everything. Let's see if there's anything else here on there. There's another concept of greed that I'll share here, which is really valuable. Greed is often about more, but it's also about right and wrong, being right, winning and losing. We often take this very secular approach, like, if I win, I'm okay. And if I'm right, I'm okay. Well, guess what you also do if you win and other people lose? Guess what you also do if you're right and other people are wrong? You're alone. You're isolated. We are masters of that. Addiction loves isolation. And so what we really want to do is not be greedy, but looking at how can we all win? How can we all be right? The true experience of intelligence and growth is the ability to know that 2 opposites can be true, right? That's that one opposite can be true in one way and one the other. And that's where you really know you've evolved as a human, when you see things that this can both be true for me and false for me at the same time. And kind of complicated, but really beautiful if you've heard of it. Comes from double thinking in Orwell's 1984 book. But anyway, great stuff.
You definitely invest in yourself. And when I look at that word gratitude, I sit the I is the middle letter of gratitude, right? If I'm not grateful, then gratitude means absolutely nothing. And that's got to be it has to be the center of it. So if you don't feel grateful after hearing some tools to do something like that, then that's a great place to get started right now, if you have no gratitude. So keep going.
All right. So next letter is H. So hiding out or hope is that one. So with addiction, we get so good at hiding out, right? And there's a lot of ways we hide out. We hide out through denial, right? We say we're not good enough, we're different than everyone else. One of the things that A does, unlike anything else I've experienced, is AA does two things. One is it helps you realize you're not alone. You sit in the room with people, and all of a sudden you're hearing your story said over and over again around the room. You no longer can do this isolation and say, I'm all alone. My pain is different than everyone else's pain. I don't, and that's really problematic if we do that, right? Because again, we isolate more. We say we're different. And if we're different, then usually that means we're broken, which means that we're going to keep wanting to drink or act out in any addictive behavior. So what we want to do is we want to look at, we want to try to move that towards hope and optimism. Again, kind of ties into gratitude, but where hope plays a big role is with being clear that there is a future that can allow us to be thriving in life and still be sober, right? So the other thing that you get in AA is when you look in the face of somebody that's sober, you realize, like you hopefully look at my face and see that, wow, it is possible, and he did it, I can do it too. And so again, that's the hope we have to create, that change is possible, that all of this is possible. Now, what stops us from really embracing hope is often our emotional energy, our negative emotional energy, or what we label as negative, because emotions are only how we label them, right? Some people might label happiness as negative. So the technique I want to share here is by far and away my number one technique that works unbelievably well and is about as simple as it gets. And it's taught by David Hawkins, who's passed on. David Hawkins wrote Letting Go, Power versus Force, and it's probably the most foreknown expert I've ever taught and learned from, or ever learned from, around emotional health and wellness and how to deal with our emotions. And so the technique is so simple, you won't even think it works and want to try it, but trust me, this has changed my life and the people I work with. And that's why I inundate this technique over and over again. It's really simple. Let's say I have an emotional response I don't like. Something negative comes up, and like I'm really sad. That's a great example, right? And if I'm sad, the first thing I want to do is I want to feel it in my body. So just want to check in briefly and say, okay, I'm sad. Where do I feel that? Because often we live in our head and we store our emotional energy in our body. That's why we get sick. That's why we do all of this, right? So the first thing we want to do is start connecting the emotions to our physical experience. So really just simply saying, where do I feel it? Okay, I feel that maybe in my stomach here, solar plexus maybe. And then we say, after we've just seen where it is and what it is, then we ask one question. Do I want to keep experiencing this negative emotion? If the answer is no or yes, well, if the answer is no, then you would ask whatever you believe in for help to let go of that. It's really another powerful way of setting intention. So let's say, I'll give you an example here, the easiest. So I was on the beach in Toronto. My daughters are now 18 and 15. They're in Colorado, really painful to be here. And I miss them to death. And there's a lot of reasons why I'm here, long story. However, I was experiencing incredible sadness missing them, understandably. So on the beach here, this was about 8 months ago, and I'm just sobbing, and I'm missing them and just really struggling. And I'm like, what would I do if I was coaching myself? Like, oh, I would do this process. So I immediately say, okay, where do I feel? Checked in. And then I said, what? And then I said, do I want to keep experiencing this emotion? And I said, no. But actually I said, no, but. And my answer was, no, I don't want to keep experiencing, but if I don't experience it, I'm going to feel guilty. I have to feel guilty for not being in Colorado with my girls. And that's why I keep experiencing the sadness. So my answer was, no, I don't want to experience it. But part of the answer was, yes, I want to experience it over and over again, because that's validation that I really miss them, that I really made a mistake, or that I'm supposed to be there. Again, a little bit of weird energy around that, but understanding it and looking at that, and then simply saying, and so once I realized that, I'm like, oh my God, I'm making more sadness because I'm feeling like I have to feel sad or I'm not a loving parent, which is not true, right? I can feel sad and then release it. So I said, universe, please help me just learn how to release this and work through it. And amazingly enough, like I find now I cry and then it gets let go. So the idea behind it is answering yes or no, whatever it is, around whether you want to release it or not. If you answer no, you don't want to release it, then you might ask like, okay, universe, help me understand why I don't want to release this. Now, when you pose the question, the key is not to worry about it anymore. Simply let it go. And this is what Hawkins teaches pretty much with all his books. He comes back to this one technique. And I tell you what, it takes seconds to do. The hardest thing is to remember to do it. But if you do it, it's unbelievable what you'll get from it. Most of the time, your answer is yes, I don't want to experience this emotion. And then you simply set this powerful intention of saying, help me learn what I need to learn so I no longer have to experience this in that way. Because a lot of times we suffer tenfold, 100-fold more than we need to. And so that's the main lesson with that one. Does that make sense? Did I explain that well enough?
Yeah, it puts a smile on my face to just understand that we have gone through a lot in our addictions to the shame and guilt and all these things, right? That we don't feel like we deserve good things. But when you set the intention and realize, you know what, I do it, and you believe these things going forward, then yeah, you can have hope, and you can have all these elements that you're talking about right now that bring encouragement, and you want to keep going to get more.
Absolutely. Yeah. Let me share one quote here by Pema Chodron, I think her name is. She's amazing. Anyway, and this is another shift that we can do that ties into this whole idea of hope or hiding out. One of the things we do with our pain is we create a story that says the pain is just our pain and not other people's pain, and no one else in the pain we're in. We don't even intentionally do it, right? We know that if we asked ourselves, is other people in pain, we'd answer yes, but usually we're so stuck in our own pain that we forget others are struggling. So this quote applies to a lot of people's experience with Trump, if you have anger towards Trump, a lot of people's experience towards coronavirus, which if you have anger towards that, and also a lot of people's experience with the whole racial injustice and what's going on right now. We want to breathe in the pain of the situation, wishing that all beings could be free of it. Then breathe out and send loving kindness to all suffering beings, including ourselves. Why is this so powerful? The importance of this is that we often get angry at the person or thing that's creating the pain instead of angry for the people that are getting hurt by it. When we have a seed of compassion for those that are getting hurt by those behaviors, then all of a sudden we don't disconnect, we don't separate from others, we realize we're all one, all connected, and we treat ourselves so much better. So like, for example, if you're angry at Trump for what he's doing, well, don't get angry at him, get angry for the people that he's doing it to, if that's something you're experiencing. If you're angry about the racial injustice and Floyd and what happened to him, get angry at the whole culture and society that has allowed that behavior to take on all the people hurt by that, right? You don't get angry to one cop, get angry for the people that are really suffering. And that shift is magical, because what we do is then we connect with others. The biggest source of addiction is isolation. One of those, we isolate in all these weird ways. Even if we're in room with other people, we create all these barriers that keep us alone. And that alone fuels addiction.
Yeah, and I look at more of kind of like you're talking about get disappointed or outraged at the elements and things that are going on, and not actually the person itself or the person.
Yes.
And put your energy towards, because I believe there's like, the things of good and evil and bad and good, and these spiritual battles are going on, right? And it's like, be mad at that, but because the other people, they're just suffering from their own insecurities,
their own challenges,
struggles.
Right? So, one of the things that helped me accept Trump in office, because I honor truth and my version of truth, and I feel like there's very little truth coming from the top highest level of our government. And so one of the things that helped me, though, is the Me Too movement probably wouldn't happen without Trump. This racial injustice, all the stuff going on right now with racism and everything, may have not happened without Trump in office. He's made it impossible for some people to ignore certain things. And so again, when I look at that, I say, wow, I'm really angry for all the women that were hurt by Trump being in office, and now I'm gonna use that to fight for them, but also realize that I'm one and the same. And so with addiction, we don't want to get angry at alcohol. We want to get angry at the fact that we are in a culture and society that sends messages left and right and inundates us with the fact that if we don't drink, we're not normal, happy, or anything, right? And still instead say, okay, for all of us that struggle with addiction, remember we're all out there. A seed of compassion for them is a seed of compassion for myself. Yeah, good.
And there's always those two sides of the coin, right? Some people can look at addiction as a means to an end, like they need it to cope with something, and they can justify that. And then they can look at addiction as, well, you're just running away and it's a moral issue. Just get over it. And so there's always opinions, whether it's, you like Trump or don't like Trump. You care about coronavirus, you don't like coronavirus. You feel like what happened with police brutality is horrible, but something that some people feel like, well, it needs to happen to keep the balance in the system. So all these different perspectives. But when we talk about like addiction and families and the pain that's going on from you hurt me, I'm going to do this. It's this, we're not in this space of understanding each other. We're more in this space of trying to justify which end that we believe in, which, and I think that maybe ties into your T of what you have with,
which is temptation or transparency. Temptation is all of addiction, really all desire, right? Like in the power of and how temptation really represents the short-term pleasure we seek left and right? And we choose that over long-term happiness, health, wealth, all of that. And so, or transparency. So the one quote I love here I'll share is by Brene Brown. The Power of Vulnerability is one of the best TED Talks I've ever seen. That's on TED Talk for Brene Brown, but she shares this in that talk. We are the most in-debt, obese, addicted, and medicated adult cohort in U.S. history. Powerful stuff. The most in-debt, obese, addicted, and medicated adult cohort in U.S. history. So what I hope you all take from that is you're not alone in your suffering. You're not alone in your addictive behaviors. We are in a culture inundated with these challenges. And part of the pain is that we keep this all, we hide behind the pain through our temptations instead of being transparent and connecting with others and sharing our truth and sharing what's really going on. And part of that key is forgiveness. And so forgiveness had to be part of these 5 steps, because forgiveness is what leaves us living in the past. When we don't forgive, we are letting the past control our present moment. The best way to come present and be present in the moment is to practice forgiveness. The number one thing I always try to remember people know is addiction and trauma go hand in hand. Trauma usually means there was a perpetrator in your life causing major pain in your life, sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse, whatnot, right? The challenge people face is that a lot of people don't realize that forgiveness is not about condoning their actions. Forgiveness is about releasing their actions from your energy so you can be present and so you can heal. Because if we carry a seed of anger towards somebody or hurt or victim energy, then what we're really saying is that I am going to hold on to that anger about you and what you did to me until you do whatever. But sometimes if the trauma is big enough, it's nothing. You can't do anything. And we forget that is what's eating us alive. And so Desmond Tutu, I love him. He wrote the book of Forgiveness, I think it's called. And he has a really simple 4-step process I'll share here, which is simply tell the story, which is whatever the story is around who you need to forgive, what happened, and then name the hurt. So like, I could say like, oh, my dad, my parents divorced at age 5, and my dad came out of the closet gay in the 70s, and I thought that was okay, and then immediately found out it wasn't okay, and got made fun of for having a gay father and all that stuff, right? And then also my dad was struggling with his own stuff. He wasn't able to be present a lot in my life, and I went from having a father every day to having a father every other weekend at best, and then he moved to New York from Ohio, and so I can choose to let all of these things bother me, or I can say, they help define who I am and make me who I am. And I'm going to say, I forgive you because you had your own struggles to go through, and allow me to come to the present moment. So we tell the story, we name the hurt. So the hurt might be most of our hurts from our childhood either come down to rejection or abandonment, those two. Mine was absolutely rejection. I felt rejected by my father. I felt rejected by my friends. And so like when I launch programs to my list, all my rejection fears come up because I know I'm going to have people that are going to say mean things. That's life, right? So the beauty of this is when we can really look at it for what it is and forgive for it, and then allow us to bring us back to the present moment. And so when we name the hurt, that's what we're naming, like rejection, and then we say, do I want to forgive? And we have to forgive that other person. We also have to forgive ourselves sometimes, a lot of times, right? And then we decide whether we're going to have a relationship or not with that person. The challenge is that a lot of us say we forgive but never really do, right? Like we say we're okay with something, and then 3 months later, we blurt out how that person's been doing this and how much they hate it. Like, didn't you say you forgave me for it, or you let go of it? Well, we really didn't. And so part of this, we really have to act with integrity and intentionally practice forgiveness. Forgiveness might be the most important thing we do in this life. And that's in chapter 4 of the book. There's a couple other great techniques that are in the book there. But really, forgiveness comes down to self-love. Self-love comes down to self-mastery. And so it's like self-awareness, self-love, self-mastery. And that's kind of the steps of what it takes for us to really free ourselves from addiction, because addiction is a really beating up of the self.
Yeah, and unforgiveness, I've heard unforgiveness phrased as, and even resentment and unforgiveness go hand in hand as well, is drinking poison and waiting for the other person to die.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, great quote with that.
Yeah, and Matthew West, if you ever heard him before, he's an amazing Christian artist and has this great, wonderful song called Forgiveness, where, a woman whose child was killed by this gentleman as a drunk driver. She went to court, fought for this guy, forgave him. And when he got out of prison, this man that killed her son actually became part of their family, and they loved him and supported him, and just
that's amazing.
Talk about that. It is so freeing in that regard. So I think forgiveness is a huge part, especially as you talk about forgiving yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So if I can right now, I just want to take you through these 5 again with an example, right? So let's say you're struggling with some addictive behavior. Let's use alcoholism in the picture. So struggling with alcoholism and drinking too much, right? So the first step is F, choosing love over fear. How do we choose love over fear? The technique I shared was simply is life notes. So one of the things you might do in life notes if you're struggling with alcoholism is you take a minute and write down all the things that make you angry about alcohol yourself. Like, I hate when I drink, I become an asshole when I drink, or I'm so, or whatever it is, just being honest with yourself about how you're feeling around your drinking, the pain it's causing you, acknowledging the pain it's causing you, acknowledging the pain it might be causing your family members that are around you, and getting it on paper, because that's the first step of releasing it from your brain so you're not carrying it around like this dead weight all the time. Then you move on to choosing intention over illusion. So then you set this beautiful intention that I want to thrive in sobriety. Maybe you write it into an affirmation. I am thriving in sobriety every day of my life. What does that really mean? That means you're setting this intention to be that. It means that, but what I want to make sure you hear is, doesn't mean you might not be thriving in sobriety at first. That's okay. You're setting an intention to be something. The goal is, as Greeks define, is to move towards that becoming of thriving in sobriety, and enjoying the joy that comes from that, knowing that you're going to have ups and downs around the whole way, and maybe you're still actively drinking every night. That's not the goal. The goal is setting this beautiful intention and reconnecting that intention. It's a magic. Then you move on to the G, choosing gratitude over greed, right? So be grateful for all you have. Having an alcohol problem is a bit of a first world problem, right? Because you can't have an alcohol problem if you're broke, or if you live in a country that doesn't allow you to drink, or you can't even get clean water, right? So in some ways, being able to even have that challenge is pretty lucky. And being grateful for all you have, again, cultivates a beautiful experience of what you have in life versus not enough. Because if you feel like you don't have enough, you're going to be seeking addictive behaviors all over the place. Because addiction is about, not being at peace with yourself, not being good enough, all that. Then you move on to the H. Want to choose choosing hope over hiding out, right? So choosing hope over hiding out means, what we talked about, means really understanding having a seed of compassion for everyone else in your shoes, and knowing that there are other people there, knowing that that as you do the work, you can free yourself, and then using this Hawkins technique, which is simply saying, okay, I hate myself, I'm a loser fucking drunk, right? That's one of the common things we might say. I'm a loser drunk, I'm a loser, I hate myself. And then you simply say, okay, where do I feel that? Well, I feel that maybe in my solar plexus. It's about myself, and it feels like a weight or whatever. Okay, great. Do I want to keep having this feeling? No, I don't. Okay, universe, please, God, spirit, whatever you choose to believe, please help me learn how to release it. Simple as that. Now, you might say, yes, I want to keep having this negative experience about myself, right? And then you kind of say, well, spirit, help me learn how to release this desire to feel like crap about myself. And because sometimes we're more comfortable staying broken, so to say, and believing we're broken than we are about the other way. Anyway, it's simple as that, like that. And then the T, choosing transparency over temptation, would simply be, again, forgiving. And most likely the first person you have to forgive is yourself, but you might have to forgive others first, like your dad if he was an alcoholic, right? And just realizing he was doing the best he could, and then forgiving him, but then saying, I forgive myself for all the transgressions I've made through my drinking and the hypocrisy I've lived with, which we all have hypocrisy. Pretty much assured, if you have a strong energy towards something or someone about something, it's probably because you've done the same thing or have that same energy in you. And that's how life works. So those 5 steps coming together can be pretty simple and quick, and it can work in a lot of different ways.
Great tools and great tips right there. Easy to remember because we usually hear fight or flight. Now we're talking about fight and light, and that's great. I think I know it'll be a great takeaway for people, and things they can start applying like right now, which is what this is about, giving people tools that they can take to learn how to have a healthier family system. So I really appreciate the way you laid that out. And again, people can tap into you by, what's your website? People can go find you the easiest.
Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off there. Dave.coach is my website. DAVE.COACH, that's a spell there. Again, .coach, not .com. And so you can find me there. And then I'll share a link with you guys. I'm sure it'll be posted there by YouTube, but dave.coach/art. I'll offer something for all the people listening to this, a discount off my coaching package. And on that site, you'll find about my coaching, and also Insider Circle, which is one of my passions. It's a 12-week online recovery program that has been incredibly powerful. And I'll share one concept with it, which I think is really valuable to hear anyway, which is relationships are absolutely critical to our sobriety and our pathway to sobriety, or pathway to healing any addiction. We hurt in relationships, we heal in relationships. If we're isolated and only doing all this work alone, what really that means is that we haven't a chance to practice it and to apply it in relationship. And so the key is that in Insider Circle, what we do is we bring together anonymously, you only use your first name, anywhere from 15 to 45 people, and you all get to experience in relationship, the challenges with addiction, talk about it, experience it. But unlike AA, which I know people have a lot of fear around that and being in person, this is truly anonymous. They'll hear your voice and that's it. So that's about as limited as it gets, but people all over the world do the program. So it's a really powerful concept to understand. And one thing I've learned is that really, if you get sober on your own, what you're really doing is you're learning all these tools and techniques on your own, and then you're bringing them into relationship, and that's when they really do their magic. And so this kind of skips a step and helps you do that, because that's the fast track to success, right? That's one of the reasons AA works so well, is you're going into relationship in those group meetings, and you're really feeling that camaraderie, understanding, and hearing your story and others, and believing what's possible. And that's the magic that can really happen there. And you're also being triggered constantly. And that's a beautiful thing if you look at it like these triggers are happening to heal me. They're happening for me to see the painful things I have in my life that are in me that I need to release.
Yep. But a big fan of community coaching and counseling. So Dave, I
Yeah.
just want to say thanks for being part of the Art of Intervention Project Summit. This has been awesome. And I know people are going to get a ton of value from this. So I just
Good.
really appreciate you. And I'm grateful for you. Thank you.
Well, I'm grateful for you too. Thank you so much. And it's been a pleasure to be on today.
Cool. We'll talk to you soon.
Yeah.